we've got a lot to talk about today, so get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Yeah, and there's a great UFO video from Poland. I think this was taken November 8th. You see these lights coming on and going off. It's like a different color there. It's like white, and then it turns to orange. Really cool video. Now, I would love to see different angles on this and witnesses coming forward talking about this. It's always possible these could be drones or something like this, but they certainly look like many UFO videos that I've seen and even witnessed. So I think we're probably looking at something genuinely anomalous here. So again, are these sorts of videos showing some sort of deliberate display by the phenomenon? That's what I think is going on. I think they want us to know they're there. They're doing it kind of subtle ways, kind of a grassroots, effort at disclosure, letting individual citizens and, letting this spread out amongst the populace and, a ground up disclosure instead of a top down disclosure. Meanwhile, of course, I still have hope for top down disclosure, but the phenomenon isn't waiting for that. And they're trying to do this more organic disclosure, which I appreciate. It doesn't cause as much pandemonium as, a bunch of motherships flying over cities during the daytime. But look at that. That was interesting. Yeah. Going on and going off. And then that one huge flare. That is really, really interesting. I haven't seen anything quite like that before. And then it just goes totally out. Yeah, let me know what you think about that fantastic sighting from Poland. Everybody's talking about the NASA panel on 3I Atlas. It was, really nothing burger. They did this live event about 3I Atlas, shared some images. Their images were not very exciting. Like this is one of their images. Really underwhelming. There was a citizen astronomer who apparently caught this image. I don't know how he was able to capture such a wonderful image of 3I Atlas. I would really need to see this corroborated, but that's the story going around, as this is a civilian capture of 3I Atlas. Obviously using some very fancy telescope, if this is legit. But this is, better than what NASA is showing us, right, is the point. This is what NASA is showing us versus what, a citizen is providing. So, yeah, really underwhelming, very disappointing, not surprising, of course, sadly, but, it is what it is. Meanwhile, people are talking about age of disclosure. That is coming a lot today. Let's see. Ross Coulthart even believes that because of age of disclosure, there may be movement from the White House.
There is a rumor. There is a rumor doing the rounds, and I've heard it from multiple people now, not from the horse's mouth, not from the administration. Nobody in the administration has said this to me. But there is a rumor doing the rounds that once the age of disclosure film has aired, there may be movement from the White House. Now, I'm not holding my breath, because even though Mr. Trump did make promises during the campaign to be more open and transparent with UAP videos and photographs and documents and to help us get to the truth of the UAP mystery, there has been a deafening silence from the administration on UAPs. Now, I am told by people very senior in the administration, I can put it like that there is a desire to get to the truth. And they've just been distracted by the Middle East, by Ukraine, by the economy, by the need to act on more urgent, pressing domestic matters, and that they are turning their head to the UAP issue. I guess I've got a one-track mind. I don't understand why any incoming president, faced with the probability of being briefed about the biggest secret in human history, wouldn't immediately scurry to the White House press room podium and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, I must apologize. We have been lying to you for the last 80 years. We did not tell you the truth. I, President Trump, as your new president, will tell you the full truth because I believe in transparency, openness, and accountability."
Well, yeah, like Ross says, I'm not holding my breath on that. That's a good thought. And who knows? Who knows what could happen? According to the Project Preserve Destiny information, Trump has tried to wrestle control of part of the UFO control group away from the Pentagon for some reason. I guess he didn't like what the Pentagon was doing with the UFO control group and he wanted more control of it, which is fascinating if true. And that definitely signals a different policy under Trump, regarding UFOs, at least behind closed doors. But obviously that has not matriculated out into the public yet. We haven't seen any sort of effort at disclosure. However, like Ross says, Trump did promise disclosure. He says, "I will do it. I have to do it." Well, he hasn't done it yet, but I guess he still has time left in his administration to do it. So fingers crossed that happens. But like Ross says, I'm not holding my breath. However, could there be a change after Age of Disclosure comes out? Once that hits and people start taking it seriously, if they do, could that give the president or Congress or, other actors involved license to actually provide disclosure? They can't do it now because not enough people are on board with it. But once this comes out and people see the big names that are talking about this, credible people talking about this, maybe that will give them, permission, of a sort to come forward, more proactively on UFO disclosure. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But we'll see what shakes out. This particular author was not so impressed by Age of Disclosure. New York Times author says you're a chump if you watch that movie. From the New York Times. But the Age of Disclosure sneakily slips from those officials' arguments for transparency into the realm of pure speculation. If you don't believe that extraterrestrials surveil our planet in bubbles that can warp time and space, the movie suggests that you've simply fallen victim to a government disinformation campaign intended to make people skeptical of UAPs. Hasn't Hollywood, described as part of that effort, done precisely the opposite? Question the film and you're a chump, it implies. But anyone who sits through its nearly 2 hours of unprovable claims is a chump of a different sort. So if you even watch the movie to completion, according to this guy, you're a chump. Of course, I assume that he watched the movie to completion. So what does that make him, right? It also talks about a disinformation campaign. So is he a truth teller? Or is he part of this disinformation campaign that he is mocking here? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's see what other news we have on Age of Disclosure, if anything. I think that's about it. All right, moving on to the next story. Jay Anderson talking about plasma beings in the atmosphere, as revealed by a scientific paper.
There are some publicly available documented incidents of very strange light phenomena that appear almost organic and multicellular in their behaviors and appearance that have been captured through official onboard cameras during NASA missions, one of the most famous being the STS-75 mission and the UFO activity that came with it, which we will discuss during this video, because these STS missions and the subsequent anomalous phenomena that came with these particular missions is something that's referenced by the scientists in this very interesting study on plasma phenomena. The paper goes on to describe how these self-illuminated plasmas are attracted to and may feed on electromagnetic radiation. Now, this is particularly fascinating because it's something that's highlighted in the paper's abstract, but also ties directly into what I believe to be, quite frankly, an integral mechanism biophysically, bioenergetically within ourselves that allowed me to have the experiences I did with these light orbs or plasma phenomena. Although I'm not certain that the phenomena being studied in this research paper is the same phenomena that I myself experienced, I think that what we have here is a provocative explanation, at the very least, a means of establishing some form of baseline for trying to understand what we could be dealing with here.
Okay, now that's really interesting. When I interviewed Jeff Woolwine a couple of months ago, from Tucson, he had this really amazing theory about plasma beings. He even had a system for how to predict these UFOs, these beings, whatever they are, appearing. He knew when they were going to appear, and they did. And he could take people out, and they showed up right on time, right when he thought they would appear. Because he had been, studying them for years, and he knew their habits. And he also believed they fed on energy or something like that. They didn't live in the atmosphere, or they didn't live in orbit, like that giant floating thing in space. But they did seem to be feeding on energy, or at least that was his belief. Something to do with fault lines and so on. And if you haven't seen that interview with Jeff Woolwine, I highly recommend you to go check that out, or other interviews with Jeff. Really fascinating theories, and even being able to put his theories into practice. Because like I say, he can predict when these beings or entities are going to show up. This idea of plasma beings is entering our public consciousness, and I think that's really interesting. I don't know if they are plasma beings, like, just animals running around in our atmosphere, if that's what's really going on, or if we're simply able to conceive of plasma beings and the phenomenon is representing itself as plasma beings, or we're just seeing some crazy beings and we're trying to we're trying to define them, and the best we can come up with is plasma beings. I think maybe it's option number 3. But either way, fascinating stuff that, it has been apparently scientifically studied, and there's a scientific paper on these things. What are these things, guys? That is a really famous image, if I can find it, of that crazy tube in space. What is that crazy space tube? Yeah, that thing right there. It's like a mile long or something, and it's got all these other things all over it. Just fascinating. Really is. Is that a giant mothership? Is that some sort of crazy plasma being? Let me know your thoughts on this, because this is one of the most intriguing UFO images that we've ever seen, or that I've ever seen. So yeah, again, let me know your thoughts. Oh, and before I go any further, I wanted to touch on something. I'm leaving. I'm going out of town for a few days. So I probably won't have a lot of videos, if any, over the next few days. So I just wanted to prepare you for that, but I'll be back with lots of good videos for you. And I may even have time to get a few videos pre-made for you over the weekend. We'll see if I have time for that. But yeah. So let's see what else we got. Yeah, the people are sharing this image again, which I think is just super fascinating. One of the most weird, is this a Nazca line? A geoglyph being oculated in the desert of Humuna, Nazca. The oculated being is a flying deity of the Paracas and Nazca cultures, usually depicted holding trophy heads in food. Yeah, because the Nazca people, they were headhunters. But this fella right here, he doesn't look like a Nazca human, right? It looks like something else. And he's got 3 fingers. Now, I think sometimes they depicted beings, or even humans, as having 3 fingers just because it was easier to depict. But that doesn't look like, just a dude. He's got crazy things coming off of him. I don't know what this is, but it may or may not indicate, a Nazca mummy type being, or, at least an NHI of some sort. Now, I really hope that's not the case, because I don't like to think of them as headhunters, right? They were living amongst a headhunting culture, however, for thousands of years. So we can't completely discount the possibility that they were involved in that in some level. And this is a culture that evidently thought very well of them and interred their bodies after they were dead, mummified them. So, yeah, let me know what you think about that. I don't want to think of the Nazca mummies as headhunters, but it is a possibility. Meanwhile, Jake Barber caught up to Dennis Ansberg and Beatrice Villarreal and discussed some of his own experiences. I love that Jake Barber and these guys are getting together.
Came over the hill, foot to 200 foot
Yeah.
that night when I got dispatched to retrieve the egg with a long line system and a remote hook, as we call it. It's usually a 150 foot to 200 foot long line that hangs below the aircraft. And I flew in that night with that long line system and came over the hill and saw a shiny, like metallic white egg on the ground, and hooked it up and flew it to another secure location where it was offloaded. And that experience was something that stuck with me.
Is it dangerous to go close to it?
Is it dangerous? Well, some there are records within the crash retrieval program of there being side effects or medical conditions associated with those who have recovered craft from the ground or even in the air. I'm one of those myself. And this gets confused a lot in the public that has seen some of my podcasts or some of the coverage of some of the conversations I've had like this. There were two objects that I am talking about publicly. One is the egg. The other is what we call was an eight gong, or it's basically a flying disc.
Well, we've all heard the Eight Gong story, which is an amazing story that he had this like spiritual or consciousness connection to this female entity, or what he perceived as a female entity, interacting with him. And he says that this being is still interacting with him today, which is amazing. Is it guiding him in talking about this stuff? I would love to know that. Is, again, this some sort of disclosure effort led or encouraged by elements of the phenomenon? Either way, really cool to see that him sitting down with Beatrice and Dennis and talking about this stuff. I think that, they both are coming at it from different sides and have different information, but both are extremely valuable. I think Beatrice's information is, peer-reviewed and hard to argue. There is a network of UFOs around the Earth. And Jake's information is very of today. UFO crash retrievals and the craziness surrounding them, including consciousness and spiritual interactions with whatever the heck is going on. But I think both are extremely valuable, and both of them are very real as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, good to see them getting together and taking each other seriously. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think about everything covered today, including this rabbit with the most amazing ears. Damn, fella. Yeah, don't try to sneak up on this guy. Yeah, let me know what you think about this rabbit and everything else. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Buy a coffee mug. Become a channel member. Channel members are rock stars. And I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you. Meanwhile, there's plenty of other videos on the channel. And I'll see you next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.